Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Joe, and today we're over here in Savage Skull at Town Hall 13 taking a look at some clan war attacks. The Queen Charge Miner Hog Rider hybrid attack again. Like, is this army like really that strong, or is it just the bases that they're done on? That was one of the things that stood out to me in two different wars by the same exact attacker. Like, I watched this attacker and his replays, and I was like, wait a minute, these bases all look exactly the same or in a similar format. We're going to take a look at those bases today and kind of break it down. That way we can kind of point out, like, it's clan war, so you get time to look at the bases, you get time to assess the base and say, does this army work on this base? Does it reflect what I saw in the video? Let's get into that today, but first we're going to take a look at this awesome base. It was designed by Ice Queen over at ClashChamps.com. I'm going to link it down below if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much, Ice Queen, for this amazing, beautiful base. Let's get into our replays. In the previous video, we talked about the Queen Charge and the Miners and the Hogs working together, the Barb King and the Siege Barracks being placed in a certain region to do a lot of funneling and stuff like that, but we didn't really talk about the base designs, and we have one player in particular in all of these replays, and you'll notice the common theme among the bases that he selects. And when we look at this base in particular, you have this upper portion where you have the town hall, you have a few cannons, you have two wizard towers, and you'll notice that there are a centralized clan castle, the queen, as well as the eagle artillery. Now, miners and hogs, you don't really necessarily have to worry about the queen with the miners in the mix. However, you do have to worry about the clan castle troops and getting rid of the ice golems or whatever happens to be in there. So we're going to notice that once this upper portion is eliminated, it's going to form basically an L shape in the base, and you'll notice that this basically leaves it for our miners and hogs to channel through the base and work their way around and deal with the back side of the base. But first you have to get into the Queen Charge and be able to eliminate the town hall first and deal with those enemy clan castle troops while keeping that queen alive. So we're going to start with the queen dropped, as well as a balloon and the healers. There's also going to be a wizard over there, but he's basically obsolete because it was inside of range of that cannon. So we're going to use baby dragons instead, and the only reason this is actually effective is because there's no seeking air mines in this region, and they're able to deal with these buildings to focus the queen, channel her into this location. Two wall breakers in the rage spell to carry the queen inside the base, and so we get a nice wall breaker opening. The queen's going to work her way in, and the healers are just outside of range of the town hall, which is absolutely perfect. But another rage spell needs to be dropped because we have to deal with this statue, the Grand Warden statue. That thing is a tank, dude, and it will absolutely destroy your queen, as well as having to deal with the scatter shot. Now, we had a little bit of a bad drop there with the wall breakers. I'm pretty sure it was intended for the inner portion of this base, but it just didn't work out. And now we're getting ready to work the queen into another scatter shot. So something that you need to know is that scatter shot will absolutely put a hurting on your queen, and we know that we have to prepare her for this region because she's about to step into the clan castle's location. She has to get rid of that scatter shot, and she has to deal with the troops that come from the clan castle. So at the same time, down here in the far western corner, you're going to see the king dropped as well as the siege barracks, and we're going to see a little bit of funneling happening before we drop our miners and hog riders and grand warden and stuff like that. So Queen does her job up there. She deals with a scatter shot, and the poison spells down for those ice golems, which are targeting that queen. So once we have a nice funnel, you'll notice that there's a nice clearance down here in the western side. The P.E.K.K.A. and the wizards do their job. The king does his job, and now we can place our hog riders and our miners, as well as the royal champion and the grand warden. And they're going to work their way through this region with the use of heal spells to keep them alive. Now, the best thing about the miners tied in with the hogs is that a hog will just, they'll completely ignore the queen, but the miners won't, and the queen will go down at the hand of the miners. So that's where this really works out, when you have a queen placed on the back side of the base. Now, there's also going to be hog riders in the siege barracks, which are going to tie into our group. So we have miners in the core under heal spell, and we also have hog riders kicking out on the outsides of the base, dealing with defenses with the assistance of our royal champion. The grand warden's ability is going to be used to carry our troops through the back side, get them through this dense location of possibility of giant bombs and traps, and we're going to have to take on the backside defenses. But here's something that you really need to pay attention to, is the fact that the queen does survive, and she does assist with taking down the final scatter shot. The scatter shot is an absolutely devastating defense versus hog riders and balloons, so that queen being able to sneak in on a distracted scatter shot helps out tremendously with the success of this attack. And so with her staying alive and being able to assist with the final defenses, that's where it really solidifies the attack, and it really just zones back into the original concept of the queen charge and being able to do it, keeping her alive and ensuring that she does help with some back-end defenses, and really just frees up a lot of pressure off of the hog riders and the miners. Again, we have a beautiful attack, but this is only one of multiple attacks that he does. So there's your army. We're going to get into another replay by this attacker and take a look at the base design. All right, so we talked about the initial concept of the attack. Now look at this base. This is attack number 2, and we have a very similar concept. You have the town hall up in the top side of the base. You have a few defenses. You have a scatter shot, but you also have the similar pattern with this eagle artillery, the clan castle, and the queen on the back side of the base. So dealing with the upper portion where the town hall is located forms a little bit of a U shape or an L shape, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to have a similar pattern with the queen charge, and then the hog riders and the miners and the king and the siege barracks on the opposite side of the base for funneling purposes. So again, very similar pattern with the queen dropped, and then the same thing with the balloon looking for seeking air mines. And I mean, at this point, I really shouldn't even have to commentate it. You guys should be able to commentate it to me, because this is exactly how it's going to go down. We got the baby dragons for funneling purposes, the wall breakers under a rage spell going into this location, working this queen into the barb king as well as the town hall. And we're going to continue to see this pattern with the wizards drop for a little bit of funneling to make sure the queen stays focused towards the town hall's location. Another rage spell because she has to deal with the barb king and a scatter shot. That's a bit much for her. And you'll see some more wall breakers drop to get them down and try to open up that compartment. Unfortunately, scattershot has that, that splash damage, which eliminates the wall breakers. So a little bit of an unsuccessful situation, but the plan was there, right? I mean, it's not a bad attack overall. It was just a little bit of timing issues there. Not that big of a deal. So you got the king on the eastern side this time around, as well as the siege barracks, and we're going to find a Tesla farm. But you'll notice that the queen's working her way down towards the clan castle's location, pulling out some more ice golems with the poison spell dropped, and the king and the P.E.K.K.A. and wizards are going to do the funneling process over in the east. Similar pattern, same thing again with the miners and hog riders, the royal champion and the grand warden working their way into the scatter shot and then heading down towards that eagle artillery. So the queen's battling it out and having to deal with multiple things. Unfortunately, she will get taken out by the royal champion. So that's one of the major differences here from the previous attack, is that in the last attack, obviously the queen survived, and in this attack the queen does not. But again, it doesn't necessarily matter because we had the royal champion to keep our troops alive as they powered past the archer queen. You got hog riders sneaking in from the siege barracks, and they're working their way around the bottom side dealing with defenses, and you still have wizards that have pumped out of the siege barracks, and they're working their way around with those hogs as well, doing back-end cleanup. Royal champion is also with our group, so we have miners that have kind of spread out and have gotten on some outer buildings that didn't follow the whole base around, but we still have hog riders and we still have a royal champion that's working up into our final defenses. So even though we lost the queen in this replay, we were still quite successful. So realistically, when it comes to her portion, is getting rid of the town hall, getting rid of the enemy clan castle troops, and saving that grand warden's ability for a certain location within the base to make sure that the enemy queen's gone, get rid of the eagle artillery, and you should be quite successful. But again, base design, that's the thing that stood out to me. Let's get into our next attack. All right, so in this replay, I'm quite certain that our attacker does not want me to show this replay because there was a little bit of a mishap here. But the thing is like, he is successful with the 3-star, and I want to point out why he was successful and commend that, because when we look at this base, it's a definitely interesting base design. You got all kinds of different things. You got that boxed off location where you have a scatter shot centralized next to a clan castle and the eagle artillery in that region as well. But you're also going to notice that the similar pattern with the town hall on the top side of the base, and in the other 3 different regions you have inferno towers and the queen and the clan castle, and it's just very similar to the previous 2 replays. But he's going to approach it the same way, but there's going to be a little bit of some funneling issues at the beginning of the attack, and I want you to see how he actually rebounds. So we're going to start out with the baby dragons, and you're going to see the queen and the balloon. Obviously the balloon does find a seeking air mine this time around, so he's going to place that rage spell just ahead of the queen to try to open up the compartment. He is successful with the queen, or the wall opening. Unfortunately, he is not successful with the queen going inside the wall, and she's going to work her way towards the eastern side of the base. So we're going to see a kind of a recovery here with the wall breakers dropped and a rage spell, and she's going to just so happen to take out the buildings perfectly to work into that opening and get in on the town hall. Now, the town hall is going to do damage to the healers, so he's got to make sure that he gets rid of the town hall to ensure the success of those healers, keeping them alive. But you're also going to notice that over on the west western side, he's going to start a little bit of funneling. He's got to get that funneling process because he's going to send his hogs and his miners down through this region here to get rid of these expos and work their way towards the core of the base. So you got the Barb King and the Siege Barracks dropped. They're going to have to deal with the Barbarian King as well in the process, and the Queen's ability has to be used to save the life of her and keep her going towards that clan castle. We got to get rid of the clan castle troops, which happen to be, looks like we got a witch and some barbs and an ice golem and stuff in there, so naturally poison spell is going to be dropped. And now we have, looks like, the miners and the hogs working their way towards that region. It's going to basically go centralized, while we have the king and the P.E.K.K.A. working their way around the south side or that far western corner. So that queen's going to be tied up on the clan castle troops just like before, and you're going to notice that we have the similar pattern with the hogs, miners, royal champion, and the grand warden in the core, and the hog riders from the siege barracks. They're going to tie into this location. Grand warden's ability is going to be used here towards the location of the queen. I think he's holding on to it. There it goes. Grand warden's ability will be used to capture the hog riders and miners, and they're going to work their way around. But you're going to notice in this attack that everything's really spread out. Everything just kind of got off track because there's just so much stuff going on this base. But we have miners and royal champion on the eagle artillery, and we have hogs on the bottom side of the base working their way through the defenses, and they're going to cut back up into the bottom side of that L shape, if you will, and work into the final defenses. The queen does in fact survive, and she's going to join the group. Now the royal champion, or the enemy royal champion, is doing damage to our hogs, so that's quite unfortunate, but we still have a queen back at full health, and we still have looks like a Barb King and some wizards working their way around the bottom side of the base as well. So unfortunately, obviously the miners and the hog riders is unsuccessful, but our queen is still alive. She's going to cut through the wall and assist with the back end defenses, and we still have plenty of troops in the Barb King and the miners. So just something to show you that even though it doesn't look as successful as the previous two attacks, there is a backup plan in order to be successful with this attack. The miners, there's still some miners in there, but there's no longer any hogs. Beautiful attacks overall. I'm going to show you one more base and a different army. We're not going to watch the entire replay because it's actually one of my clanmates in a current war, but I want to show you that the same army does work on inner compartment bases where the town hall is centralized, but the siege machine is different. So while reviewing Leo's attacks, I kind of had it in my head. It was like, is this army the only one that's going to work on these style bases? And so I watched this replay actually today. This was an attack that happened earlier. I don't want to show the replay because it's actually one of my clanmates' bases, and I don't want to burn his base and then just ruin everything. That's just kind of messed up, you know? But I want you to notice the army is very similar to the army that was used in the previous 3 replays, minus the siege machine is different. We will see a wall wrecker used on this attack instead of a siege barracks. So what's going to happen on this one, instead of, doing like we saw in the previous one where the queen's focused on the town hall, the queen will be focused in on getting in on the eagle artillery. She's going to actually queen charge up through these expos and stuff like that, and then the wall wrecker is going to come in from the opposite flank and head in towards the town hall and open it up for the queen charge. Very interesting attack, and just something that you need to be aware of. I'm going to leave it at that until I get permission to show this replay. I don't want to mess up and show his base and burn it. But anyways, this was a lengthier video. Hopefully you were able to get something out of it. If you enjoyed the content, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and we will see you in the next one, guys. Take care.